Hi, welcome to our podcast, By the Poor for the Poor. My name is Tanya Matinga and I am a deficient economist. Economists designed models, economic models. In fact, one of the most prominent development economic model is based on the idea that we're going to have a trickle-down effect. So what is the trickle-down effect? The trickle-down effect is based on the idea that we are going to grow as economies, we are going to develop, we are going to grow so much that when we find the growth, when we attain the growth, the desired growth, we are then going to distribute that growth amongst everyone, amongst all communities, all societies. But here's the thing, the trickle-down effect has not taken effect. So the question is, if the trickle-down effect, which was the promise made by us economists, where we promised countries and people were supposed to wait, they were told, wait, we cannot grow everyone at the same time. We're going to grow industries, we're going to grow businesses, we're going to grow our economies, and then we will distribute. This has not happened. So if this has not happened, why are we struggling to restructure and redesign and acknowledge that we failed? Why are we struggling to acknowledge that we failed to give you the distribution that was expected, the distribution that was promised? And because this has failed, we are deciding that, because all of it is based on assumptions, so we are deciding to change our assumptions. Because if we are going to continue waiting for these development models that are not working, they have worked to a certain extent, because you go into different countries and you see all these buildings, all this development is happening, it is real. But who is benefiting from these developments? It's a limited few. And that was not the idea. Because if that was the idea, then, I regret having studied economics, because, the idea was that everybody is equal. We are all the same. There should not be any differentiation about, what one deserves and what one does not deserve. So if this has not worked, our models have not worked. The Keynesians, the Marxists, all of them, they're different in all their theories. But there's one thing they're very similar. They all come to the same conclusion. Everything is based on assumptions. So why can we not change those assumptions? Why can we not change our own? These assumptions were made by people. Where is the difficulty in governments, in politicians deciding that no, the assumptions we're making right now are wrong? If we look at what happened during the COVID, the pandemic, we will see that a lot of data was produced. A lot of information was produced to justify why we should have those injections. So later, today, when we're having the repercussions of those injections, the data is not there. Why do we struggle to acknowledge when we have failed? You will see that if you make comparisons with countries who were promoting injection and countries that were not promoting injections, the death rates are higher in the countries where people were injected. The death rates are higher in the countries whereby there was a prominent use of injections. Why? Because something went wrong. The assumptions were wrong. There is nothing wrong with making assumptions. What is wrong is not acknowledging when we've made a mistake. That is what is wrong, because the results are showing that all the assumptions that were made about COVID, in fact, if it was a man-made invention, then this same man that is inventing AI today, they can invent a situation whereby we start to talk about economies only and only when every 9 billion people, if we've gotten to 9, it's probably 8.4 right now, 8.4 billion people have access to food. They have access to water, clean water. They have access to education. They have access. So I'm appealing to politicians. I'm appealing to governments. I am appealing to the private sector. Let us have the ability to acknowledge when things have gone wrong and fix them. Let us have, because and the reason we're struggling with this ability is because the purpose The intent from which we design all these ideas, all these assumptions, all these models is not pure. We need to come from purity. We need to, I don't even know if that word exists. We need to come from a place of love and empathy, love for the next person, love for the other, whereby we say, because it's not about whether the strategy is wrong or right, it's about the intention. If the intention is right, we will create models for everyone. Because everything is just an assumption. Rules, regulations were made by human beings, and they can be remade. They can be broken. We have seen a lot of scenarios where things did not go well. We saw this. COVID is a very, very, very good example of where we went wrong. It can be fixed, but why are we not fixing it? Because there are people who are benefiting. The greed that people are benefiting from, and I wonder, how many private jets are you going to have to get to a place where you're satisfied internally, where you say to yourself, now I've had enough? How many houses, how much wealth do you need to amass to get to a point where you say, I have enough? Because at the end of the day, when you go to the graveyard, there's nothing you're taking there. Oh yes, we're creating generational wealth. Yes, we can do that. We must do that. But there's a time at which we say, how can we have collective wealth? How can we have social sovereignty? How can we have individual sovereignty that obliges us to say, I will not be at peace until such time everyone has enough? Until such time there is a trickle-down effect in my community. I'm just going to take the trickle-down effect to my community at my level. If individually we can decide we are all taking the trickle-down effect to our levels, individually, we are deciding that we are not comfortable. The same way we decided we're going to fight for a political liberation, we're going to fight for independence, we're going to fight. Why can we not fight for a collective sovereignty where everyone can participate? And then we can see all of this participation. We can see all of this innovation. We can start to export all of this innovation from poor countries, from African countries, and we can change the scenario and say, no, well, actually, Africa is no longer poor. Because it was based on an assumption that we are poor. We can also change the assumption that we are poor because Africans are not poor, actually. But we've made it so believable that people actually believe that Africans are poor. Africans themselves have started they believe that they are poor. So when we come from poverty, this is what we present. We present poverty because we are poor. And when we sit on the tables where we're negotiating, when we meet in all these meetings, I'm coming from poverty. So I'll present myself as poor because you are superior and I'm inferior. And so that's where we feel that, okay, when there's somebody who is inferior, then, we feel empowered. But the power, that's why we have a lot of mental health, because even that we're not comfortable with because we're human beings. Nelson Mandela talks about we learn how to hate. Love comes naturally. We come from love. We are people who are able to love. This thing of hatred, we had to learn it. We had to learn it so we can unlearn it and go back to our natural selves. Because it's this love that is going to drive the design of new economic models. It is this love that is going to design new rules, new regulations, new constitutions that are based on human rights, not the theoretical, the practical human right. Every human being has the right to water, to food, to education, to information. It's not 10% of the populations that only deserve, otherwise it's not fun because, if we continue to perpetuate this, here's the end result. Here's the people who are amassing the wealth today, they'll leave it to their children, but their children will have to marry other children who are going to be poor. And their children, the wealthy kids, are going to eventually have to find friends. They will eventually have to play with people. And if we don't empower the poor, they will have to play with poor people. So this is there's a consequence, there's an effect that is going to happen because we are thinking, we're going to amass and amass and amass, but our children will be encountered with a situation where there's nothing left. It's just the poor. We need to change that, and we can change that now. We don't have to wait for tomorrow. We can change that right now. See you next time.